but I go, can I just try another one? That moment comes and I just go, this is Sparta!
You think you know 300, the battles, the bodies, and the iconic lines, but Gerard Butler says there's something most fans completely missed. It's a part of the story that was never shown on screen, and once you hear it, you'll never watch the movie the same way again. Join us as we uncover what Gerard Butler reveals that fans never figured out about 300, the movie that exploded. When 300 hit theaters in March 2007, no one expected it to become one of the most talked-about films of the decade. Directed by Zack Snyder and based on Frank Miller's graphic novel, 300 brought a brutal, stylish, and visually stunning version of the ancient Battle of Thermopylae to the big screen. It wasn't a traditional historical war film. Instead, it was a bold, highly stylized retelling of the legendary stand of 300 Spartan warriors against a massive Persian army. With gritty performances, striking visuals, and unforgettable lines like, "This is Sparta," the film made an instant impression. The film stood out from the very beginning. It didn't rely on famous stars or massive practical sets. Much of it was filmed in a studio with green screens, where the backgrounds and environments were added digitally later. This gave 300 a unique and almost dreamlike look, similar to the panels of a comic book. Every frame was designed to look larger than life. Dark shadows, glowing skin, slow-motion battles, and high-contrast colors made every scene feel like a piece of art. The visual style was so different from anything else at the time that it immediately got attention. But what really surprised Hollywood was how well the film did at the box office. On its opening weekend, 300 earned a massive $70 million in the US alone. This was especially impressive considering its budget was just $60 million. That means it made back its full cost and then some within just a few days. As the weeks went on, 300 continued to attract audiences around the world. It eventually earned more than $456 million globally. This made it one of the biggest hits of the year and proved that audiences were ready for a new kind of action movie, one that didn't play by the usual rules. The success of 300 went far beyond ticket sales. It changed how action movies were made and watched. Directors began to experiment more with stylized visuals, slow-motion effects, and digital backdrops. The film's look and feel influenced many future shows and movies, including Spartacus, Blood and Sand, Immortals, and even early seasons of Game of Thrones. The way 300 blended visuals, violence, and drama into one complete style were copied many times afterward. The film also had a huge impact on pop culture. The ripped bodies of the Spartan warriors, especially Gerard Butler's portrayal of King Leonidas, became a new ideal for fitness. Magazines and gyms around the world started promoting the 300 workout, the intense training routine the actors used to get in shape for their roles. This helped start a wave of interest in functional, bodyweight-based fitness. At the same time, the line, "This is Sparta," became a viral meme. People repeated it, joked about it, and used it in videos and parodies online for years. For director Zack Snyder and actor Gerard Butler, 300 was a turning point. Snyder became one of the most talked-about filmmakers in Hollywood, leading to big projects like Watchmen, Man of Steel, and later Justice League. For Butler, the role of Leonidas turned him into a global star. Before 300, he was a working actor with a few small roles. After 300, he became a leading man known for tough, intense characters in big-budget films. 300 didn't just entertain, it changed things. It shifted how stories could be told on screen, what actors could do with their bodies, and what audiences expected from action films. Its influence is still seen today in cinema, television, fitness culture, and internet trends. And while all of that is impressive, what most fans never saw was just how intense and painful making this film really was. War behind the camera. When you watch 300, it looks like a beautifully crafted epic filled with powerful warriors, huge battlefields, and endless drama. But what most fans don't know is that the set of 300 was nothing like what you see on screen. In reality, it was small, hot, and incredibly tough to work on. According to Gerard Butler, who played King Leonidas, the filming process was so intense that someone was getting injured nearly every day. Behind all the cool visuals and dramatic slow-motion moments was a physically brutal production that pushed everyone to their limits. The entire film was shot inside a warehouse in Montreal, Canada. There were no real cliffs, no temples, and no ancient cities. Instead, everything was created using blue screen technology. That means the cast performed in front of large blue backdrops, and the backgrounds and scenery were added later using digital effects. This allowed director Zack Snyder to create the exact visual style he wanted, closely matching the look of Frank Miller's graphic novel. While the results on screen were stunning, working on a blue screen stage brought many challenges. For one, the set itself was very small. The actors had limited space to move around, which made performing large battle scenes difficult. They had to imagine entire armies, landscapes, and enemies that didn't actually exist during filming. This required a lot of focus and imagination, which became exhausting, especially when combined with long shooting hours and physical exertion. The heat inside the warehouse made things even worse. With no air conditioning and intense studio lights needed to get the film's signature high-contrast look, the temperature on set could get dangerously high. The actors wore leather armor, carried weapons, and performed fight scenes again and again in this environment. Gerard Butler even revealed that he once fainted from dehydration and overwork during filming. The physical demands of the role, combined with the heat and long hours, became too much to handle. Injuries were a daily reality. Butler said in an interview, "Every day someone was getting taken to the hospital." He wasn't exaggerating. Real spears, though dulled for safety, were still heavy and dangerous. Mistimed choreography meant real risks. In one case, an actor had a spear come dangerously close to his eye, almost causing serious injury. Another actor broke his ankle during a fall. The battle scenes might have looked clean and precise on screen, but on set, they were chaotic and full of danger. Bruises, pulled muscles, and cuts were all common. One major reason for this was that most of the actors did their own stunts. This was a choice made by both the director and the cast to make the film look more realistic. Instead of using stunt doubles for fight scenes, the actors spent months learning how to fight and then performed the scenes themselves. While this helped make the action feel raw and authentic, it also meant the risk of injury was much higher. These weren't trained stuntmen. They were actors who trained hard but were still new to this kind of physical work. Because the set was mostly digital, there was very little real scenery or props. This made it hard for the cast to feel grounded in the scenes they were playing. Imagine pretending to fight a huge battle while staring at a blue wall and swinging your sword at nothing. It took a lot of mental energy to stay focused and give a believable performance in that environment. The constant repetition of fight scenes, sometimes done dozens of times in a row, added to the exhaustion. With each take, the pressure to get it just right never let up. The gear the actors wore also added to the stress. The leather costumes looked great on screen, but they were heavy, hot, and uncomfortable. Swinging weapons, running, and jumping while wearing these outfits became physically draining, especially after hours of filming. And remember, there were no real break periods for rest and recovery. Actors had to keep going, often working through pain and fatigue to meet the production schedule. Despite all of this, the cast remained committed. Gerard Butler especially pushed himself to the edge, leading the group both on screen and off. He believed that all the discomfort and effort helped him step into the role of Leonidas more fully. His intensity and willingness to suffer for the part became a big reason why his performance felt so real and powerful. But while the set of 300 was a war zone in its own right, what happened before the cameras even started rolling was just as extreme. Wait until you hear what the cast went through just to look like Spartans. Fitness or torture? When people think of 300, one of the first things that comes to mind is the Spartan physique, lean, muscular, and powerful. Gerard Butler didn't just play King Leonidas. He embodied the Spartan ideal, chiseled into a living statue of war. His shredded body in the film inspired gym workouts, magazine covers, and fitness goals around the world. But what most fans don't realize is just how extreme and painful that physical transformation really was. Butler didn't just bulk up for the role. He pushed himself to the limit, and in the process, nearly destroyed his body. Before filming began, Butler and the rest of the cast started training at a facility called Gym Jones. This wasn't an ordinary gym. It was run by Mark Twight, a former elite climber and performance coach who believed in no excuses no shortcuts, and no comfort. Twight was hired to make sure the cast didn't just look like Spartans, they had to become them. The goal was to build strength, endurance, agility, and mental toughness all at once. For 7 relentless months, Butler subjected himself to punishing regimens before stepping in front of the camera. His daily routine lasted up to 6 hours a day, combining several types of training. He did CrossFit-style workouts, high-rep weightlifting, intense cardio circuits, and combat drills that simulated real fighting. The goal wasn't just to get six-pack abs, it was to move and perform like a true warrior. This included sparring, sword training, flipping tires, sprinting, kettlebell workouts, and bodyweight exercises done in fast, brutal circuits. One part of this program became especially famous, the 300 workout. Designed by Twight as a one-time fitness gauntlet, the 300 workout wasn't part of the daily routine, but it symbolized the peak of what the actors were trained to endure, but it showed just how far their bodies were being pushed. The workout included 300 reps in total, 25 pull-ups, 50 deadlifts at 135 pounds, 50 push-ups, 50 box jumps, 50 floor wipers, 50 single-arm clean presses with a kettlebell, and another 25 pull-ups to finish. This was meant to be done as quickly as possible without rest. The workout went viral after the film came out, but most people didn't realize that only one cast member ever completed it from start to finish, and it wasn't Gerard Butler. Even he admitted that the level of intensity was overwhelming. Butler gave everything he had during those 7 months, and it came at a serious cost. He later said in interviews that the training ruined his body. He suffered from tendinitis, hip pain, and a torn rotator cuff in his shoulder. The constant wear and tear on his joints and muscles eventually broke him down. After filming Wrapped, Butler admitted he couldn't train at all for over a year. His body needed time to recover from the damage caused by months of non-stop stress, heavy lifting, and physical overexertion. But despite the injuries, Butler never held back. He believed that to truly play King Leonidas, he had to suffer. That suffering, he said, helped him connect to the role on a deeper level. Every ache, every drop of sweat, and every bit of exhaustion became part of the character. His transformation wasn't just for show. It was about building real strength and resilience. Unlike many Hollywood training programs, the focus for 300 was not just about looking good on camera. Mark Twight and the production team wanted the actors to move like actual warriors. They didn't just lift weights to pose in front of a mirror. They learned how to swing swords, fight in formation, grapple, and move quickly in armor. Everything was designed to create a cast that could perform fast, high-intensity action scenes without needing constant stunt double support. That's part of why the fight scenes in 300 feel so raw and physical, because the actors were truly ready for battle. And if you thought training was intense, wait until you hear how deep Butler went into the mindset of Leonidas. Spartans off-screen too. One of the things that made 300 so powerful wasn't just the visuals or the action. It was the feeling of true unity among the Spartan warriors. When you watch the movie, you really believe that these men would die for each other. That bond didn't just come from acting. It came from real experiences that the cast shared behind the scenes, especially during their intense training. What audiences didn't see was that the brotherhood shown on screen was something that was truly built in real life. Before filming even began, the cast trained together every day at Jim Jones. This was the same intense facility where Gerard Butler went through his brutal physical transformation. But it wasn't just a place to build muscle. It became the foundation for a deep connection between the actors. They weren't just working out on their own schedules. They trained as a unit, side by side, pushing themselves to the limit and encouraging each other through every painful session. These daily workouts lasted for hours and were designed to break them down physically and mentally. And that shared suffering created real bonds. The training was punishing. The men did CrossFit-style circuits, heavy lifting, bodyweight drills, and sword fighting routines. They were constantly sore, tired, and sometimes injured. But because they were going through it together, they developed a deep level of respect for each other. There's something powerful about seeing the person next to you refuse to quit, even when they're hurting. That kind of mutual endurance formed real trust, and that trust turned into friendship. Gerard Butler later explained how important this was to the final film. He said, "We knew each other's strengths and pain." That one sentence says a lot. These actors weren't just pretending to be comrades. They had already become a team long before the cameras rolled. By the time they got on set, they didn't need to fake it. They had lived it. Even the emotional scenes hit harder because of that bond. When one Spartan died or made a sacrifice, the reactions from the other characters felt genuine. That's because the friendships were real. They weren't acting out grief. They were drawing on their shared experiences of pain, exhaustion, and pride in what they had achieved together. That level of realism added depth to the story and made the audience feel more connected to the characters. The production of 300 was far from easy. The cast had to deal with a lot of physical discomfort. The set was hot, cramped, and full of bright lights used to get the film's stylized look. There was no air conditioning, and most of the film was shot in front of blue screens instead of real backgrounds. That kind of environment can be mentally draining. Without any real scenery or visual cues, the actors had to imagine the world around them in every scene. That takes a lot of focus and energy, and it can be isolating. Michael Fassbender, who played one of the key Spartans, said that the group dynamic was what helped him stay focused and fully committed to the role. For Lena Headey, who played Queen Gorgo, and David Wenham, who played the storyteller Dilios, that same energy carried into the quieter, more emotional scenes. The unity on set made it easier for all the actors to connect with each other, which brought an added layer of truth to the film. And while that brotherhood was key, it wasn't the only thing that took Butler's performance to the next level, because next, we look at how deep into Leonidas he really went. Acting or obsession? Gerard Butler didn't just play King Leonidas in 300, he tried to become him. His transformation went far beyond building muscle or learning to swing a sword. For Butler, taking on this role meant going to a deeper place mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. He wanted every moment on screen to feel real. That meant pushing himself in ways most actors never would. While training for the film, Butler didn't just focus on physical conditioning. He also practiced regular meditation. This became part of his daily routine both before and after the long, punishing workout sessions. He later described the process by saying he tried to channel Leonidas through a weird portal. He wasn't joking. He would sit in silence, focus his breathing, and imagine himself stepping into the mind of the Spartan king. To Butler, it wasn't about memorizing lines or hitting marks. It was about feeling what Leonidas felt and then bringing that to the screen. This deep mental preparation carried over into how he approached the action scenes. Butler didn't want to fake anything. He insisted on performing many of his own stunts, even when they were risky. He believed that doing the fights himself would make the performance more believable. During battle scenes, he would throw himself into the action with full force, charging into groups of stunt performers, swinging weapons and shouting at the top of his lungs. That kind of intensity came with a cost. The fight choreography was carefully planned, but accidents still happened. Butler was constantly sore, bruised, and exhausted, but he didn't back down. In fact, he used that physical pain to fuel his performance. He later said that the exhaustion helped him reach a place of real anger, frustration, and desperation. When he screamed on screen, it wasn't just acting. It was coming from a raw, emotional place. When he swung his sword or blocked an attack, it was backed by hours of real effort and training. He let the pain feed into the character. Butler also admitted that the adrenaline rushes he got from filming became addictive. There was something about being in costume, in the heat of the lights, surrounded by chaos and noise, that made him feel fully alive. Those highs didn't stop when the cameras did. He carried that level of commitment and intensity into future roles, even when it wasn't always healthy for him. In later projects, he continued doing dangerous stunts and pushing his body too hard. At one point, he developed hypothermia while filming in Iceland. In another project, he narrowly avoided serious injury during a high-speed car stunt. Butler's approach to Leonidas wasn't just a method, it was a personal journey. He embraced the suffering, the pressure, and the physical strain because he believed that was the only way to tell the story honestly. And when you watch 300, that dedication shows in every scene, but the world around him was just as intense. Next, we dive into how nearly everything you saw on screen was fake and why that made filming even harder. Nothing was real. When you watch 300, it feels massive, with towering cliffs, wide-open battlefields, and huge waves of enemy soldiers crashing toward the Spartans. But here's the surprising truth. Almost nothing you see on screen was actually there. Nearly 90% of the entire movie was created digitally after filming was done. The cast performed in front of blue screens inside a warehouse in Montreal, with just a few props and basic costumes. Everything else, the landscapes, the skies, the blood, and even the enemies, was added in post-production. This method of filmmaking was unusual at the time. Most movies used a mix of real sets, physical effects, and CGI. But director Zack Snyder wanted 300 to feel like a living graphic novel. Since the film was adapted directly from Frank Miller's stylized comic, Snyder made the bold choice to recreate that exact look, frame by frame. That meant the actors had to perform in a completely empty space, surrounded by blue walls without any real scenery to react to. For the actors, this was a huge challenge. They were asked to fight massive battles with no enemies in front of them, swing swords at the air, and charge into empty space. Most of the blood, dust, and destruction was digitally added later. There were no fake corpses, no flaming arrows, and no massive Persian army. Just stunt choreography, lighting, and a lot of imagination. To prepare for this kind of work, the cast had to rehearse the fights over and over again until they could move confidently without needing visual cues. Every slash, block, and spin had to be perfectly timed. But even then, the hardest part wasn't the movement. It was the acting itself. Without anything real to look at, the actors had to dig deep to make their emotions feel authentic. They had to believe in what they were seeing, even when there was nothing there. Gerard Butler spoke about how strange and difficult this process was. He described having to look off into the distance, imagine thousands of enemy soldiers charging toward him, and react with intensity, even though he was really just staring at a blue wall in a hot warehouse. For scenes filled with emotion, like rallying his troops or saying goodbye to his wife, it took serious mental focus to stay connected. There were no sounds of war, no epic landscapes, and no atmosphere. Everything had to come from within. Performing under these conditions required a different kind of acting. It wasn't just about delivering lines. It was about believing in the invisible. Every monster, every cliff edge, every stampede of soldiers, they all existed only in the actors' minds, until the visual effects team brought them to life months later. That kind of performance takes concentration, patience, and a lot of imagination. Despite how difficult it was, the result paid off. The film's bold visual style became one of its most defining features. 300 didn't look like any other movie when it came out. It had its own visual language, one that came straight from Frank Miller's pages, through Snyder's direction, and into reality with the help of digital effects. And speaking of bold decisions, there's still one unforgettable part of the movie that fans everywhere quote, "So next, let's talk about that famous line. Suffering by design." Most fans know 300 for its iconic visuals, famous lines, and epic battle scenes. But what many don't realize is how much real pain went into making it. Behind the stylized look and comic book colors, there was real suffering. And the truth is that pain wasn't a mistake. It was part of the plan. From the beginning, the actors weren't just working out to look good on screen. Their training, designed by elite fitness coach Mark Twight, was built to push their bodies and minds past the limit. This wasn't just about six-pack abs or battle poses. The training was focused on mental toughness, pain tolerance, and emotional endurance. The goal was to test the actors the same way a Spartan warrior might be tested in ancient times, through hardship, exhaustion, and discipline. Twight's program wasn't soft. The workouts were intense, brutal, and constant. The cast trained for months before filming and kept going during the shoot. They lifted heavy weights, ran combat drills, did punishing circuits, and practiced fight choreography, all while pushing through injuries, dehydration, and extreme fatigue. Every single day was a battle. Butler spoke openly about how physically wrecked he became during filming. He suffered from tendinitis, a torn rotator cuff, hip strain, and more. At one point, he was so dehydrated from overtraining and intense lighting on set that he fainted. After the film was finished, his body was so damaged that he couldn't train for more than a year, but he didn't regret it. In his view, every bit of that pain made the performance stronger. The rest of the cast went through similar struggles. The group trained together every day, pushing each other through the workouts and developing a kind of warrior bond. But even more than the group dynamic, it was the emotional weight of the suffering that set the tone for the film. The actors weren't pretending to be tired or hurting in battle scenes. They were tired. They were hurting. That rawness bled into the screen, giving the film its unforgettable edge. But director Zack Snyder stood firm. He believed that the pain was necessary to bring the story to life. Even though the world of 300 was stylized and dreamlike, Snyder wanted the emotions and physical performances to feel completely real. He wanted the cast to earn the mythology, not just act it. In his vision, the Spartans couldn't just look heroic. They had to fight like it, sweat like it, and suffer like it. Anything less would feel fake. That gamble paid off. When 300 hit theaters, one of the biggest things audiences noticed, consciously or not, was how real the performances felt, even in such an exaggerated world. Butler's shouts, his eyes during emotional scenes, and the weariness in his movements during long battles didn't feel acted. It felt lived. The weight of the shield, the pain in his body, and the exhaustion in his voice all made Leonidas feel like a man truly facing death with courage. This is why the film still resonates with so many people. It's not just about slow-motion battles and dramatic speeches, it's about transformation through struggle. Butler didn't just play Leonidas, he became him, through blood, sweat, and relentless effort. That kind of commitment is rare, and it's a big part of why 300 still feels powerful today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss more behind-the-scenes breakdowns of your favorite movies.